Today is Friday, October 23rd, 2015, and Joe Turner and myself, Judy Meyer, are talking to Frances Bell. Is that correct?
Yes.
Frances, is that your full name?
Frances Ann Bell.
Frances Ann Bell. And Frances, I really don't know you. I really never met you before. So I'd like to ask you some questions about your start in life. Where were you born? Can you tell us?
Missouri.
In Bourbon, Missouri. How far is that from here?
65 miles west.
And would you mind giving us a time period of when you were born?
1940.
Thank you. Thank you.
My father was mayor of Bourbon many, many years.
Really?
So I grew up right in the town, and our school was on Old 66.
Oh, on Route 66? Oh, okay. Is it still there?
It is as a service road, but I-44 replaced. But Bourbon is noted for the Bourbon Water Tower.
Oh.
And so there is a new tower that exists, but the old one exists on Old 66. And it made many things like in Look magazine, Life magazine.
Really?
So many people came through Bourbon and stopped that were celebrities or whatever. My dad being mayor, we met them.
Oh, how fun. Oh, that's nice. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
No.
I don't either. Well, when did you come to St. Louis then?
In 1958, when I graduated from high school, I worked in St. Louis and was dating, and then he became my husband in 58. I graduated in 58 and became a bride in 58.
Wow. Why did you decide to leave Bourbon then?
He was somewhat older than I, and he worked at McDonnell Douglas. And I still call it McDonnell Douglas.
Sure.
It's Boeing now.
Sure.
But he was from the Sullivan area, the Bourbon area, but I didn't know him then because he had graduated long before I did and was in service 4 years and Rolla School of Mines, and then he worked at McDonnell Douglas, and then we were married, and that's why we came to this area.
Were you married in St. Louis?
I'm married in Bourbon.
Okay, all right. And then because his job was here, this is where you live?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But I lived in St. Louis on McPherson for the summer whenever I was working in that, and then we got married in November. But as we were dating in that summer of 58, why he wanted me to meet some of his family, which I didn't.
No.
Which I was petrified to do.
Oh.
And we came out and we stopped at a little place called the Burger Bar, and it was yellow arches, not big like McDonald's, because McDonald's didn't exist at that time, McDonald's hamburger. And he bought milkshakes for his niece and nephews, and they lived on Smiley Road in Bridgeton. And it was very country-ish. And of course I lived in Bourbon, and we lived right in town, but it was a country, but we lived right in town, so this was country to me. And we got the milkshakes farm, and he drove a 57 Chevy convertible, which his niece and nephews, he said, now when we drive up, he said, they're going to ignore you because they're going to expect me to take them a ride in my convertible. Well, we pulled up in the Melody car. Joe wasn't aware what the Melody car was. The Melody car was an ice cream panel truck, and then several years later. But I mean and it was on Smiley Road at their driveway when we pulled up, and they were waiting to get their ice cream. Well, when they saw Uncle Dean, they immediately left the ice cream wagon because they knew Uncle Dean had milkshakes. So they all jumped in the car. And he left me stranded there, and finally their parents came out and introduced themselves. So, and he said, well, someday, he said, I'm going to get married, and when I do, I'm going to live out here. Well, within a year about a year later then, there were 6 homes went up in a cornfield right off of Smiley Road.
A cornfield, you say?
So, the one brother lived on Smiley, then a brother bought the house next door, and we were in the middle, and then the cousin was on the other side.
Wow, sounds like a real family affair.
Right.
How many brothers did he have?
Well, he was the youngest of a family of 10.
Wow, whoa. And is your husband living now?
No, he died in November of 1988.
Oh. Well, after you got married and then you moved on Smiley.
Off of Smiley on Terry.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, what was that like on Terry?
It was a gravel road and by the creek.
The creek?
And we had, well, we still have the creek. We don't have the bridge anymore, but we used to have a little bridge. And after my children were born, we would walk down to the creek and sit on the bridge deal and wait for their daddy to come home from McDonnell Douglas. And we were very rural, and like I said, we were a gravel road, and we had the milkman came up to the door, brought your milk, if you got it from their company, and then we had a bakery truck that came on Saturday mornings, and they would sit by your driveway, and you'd go out and buy your bread or donuts or whatever.
Was it fresh?
Yes,
So they maybe made it.
It was packaged. It wasn't loose.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was packaged. To the best of my memory, it was packaged, and I think the name of it was White's, but I could be wrong on that. Now that was in the late 50s and the early 60s, and the Melody car continued, but they could not come up the gravel road. So it was something that I don't know why that was. But we would go down to the end of the road. There were 9 houses in total, but 6 new houses. And we would walk down to the road for the Melody car. And that's how we got our ice cream.
What kind of ice cream would you get from the Melody
Well,
car?
I was pregnant, and I lived on popsicles.
Oh.
So we'd go down and get a popsicle from the Melody car. But then when our first son, Chuck, was born, we had a farm, like in back of our fence, and we had a big garden in that with the brother and the cousin next door. And anyway, there would be cows and pigs and horses, and I would take my little Chuck up there, and he would see the animals and that. And then he was born in '59, and then Larry, our second son was born in 61, and then my daughter was born in 63, which her birthday is tomorrow.
Oh, how nice.
And so then it changed, but that's the way it was on gravel road.
Where did your children go to school when you lived there?
At Remington. They went to Remington grade school. It was just a regular elementary school then. It wasn't a traditional, it was an elementary, and I was head room mother there for many years, or several years. And then when our son Chuck, he went the first 2 months to the Pattonville Heights when it was new, but then we moved to California.
Why did you do that?
My husband worked for McDonnell Douglas, and he worked at Edwards Air Force Base in California in the Mojave Desert. We went out for supposedly 9 months to a year, but then he put in different bids because we did like the Mojave Desert. You either loved it or you hated it. There was no in between. And so then when we came back, Bridgeway subdivision was built, Brookside, and then Remington was no longer a grade school. It was a traditional school.
Oh, okay. That was in the 70s?
In 77.
I see. So your children started in Pattonville?
Yes,
And then did they finish in Pattonville?
Yes, my daughter was in 3rd grade when we moved to California, and then Larry was in 6th grade, and Chuck was in junior high. But then when we moved back, it was very hard on the 2 boys because they had really went to school in a small school in California City out of Mojave, and we moved back Chuck's senior year, which was very hard on him. So he only went from September, or I think school started back here in August, and he went till January, and then he had enough credit, so he took his early graduation, and then Larry did the same thing the following year. Larry was a junior when we moved back, but Deanna, our daughter, she went to Pattonville Heights, and then she graduated from Pattonville High School.
I see. Are any of them living in the area now?
Yes, my son Larry lives, he has a Bridgeton address on Smiley Road, but he really lives in Maryland Heights, and which was Chuck's house at one time, but then he sold it to Larry, and Larry lives over by Joe, Spanish Village.
He does.
Chuck and his family. And my grandchildren went to schools in, Maryland, or in Pattonville area, district. And then we, back in the late 60s, I was one of these, we always went to Bourbon, no matter what the weather was on weekends, so my children all went to, we went to church and Sunday school and everything out there. And one year, in January, it was very bad and we couldn't go, and I got the phone book out and I found a Lutheran church in Bridgeton, which was Beautiful Savior Lutheran Church, and we started going there in '69, and we went there until '71 when we moved to California. Then when we came back, then we picked up and we still go there.
Well, we are at City Hall, and the church that you mentioned, Beautiful Savior, is right next door to us.
That's right.
Have you seen a lot of changes in the church as well?
Very much so. We just recently, last month in September, we celebrated our 50th anniversary at our church, here. It started we weren't members then. When it started in the old Carrollton School building. And then they built the church in '65, I don't know if they actually built it in '65. I mean, that's when it started.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we were going in '69, it was already here, where it is now. And we did not join. We were not members at that time. We just went. When we still continue to go to Bourbon on the weekends, but when we were here, we did. And then we were gone on vacation, and my husband's brother that lived on Smiley Road that really got us out this way, he passed away, and the pastor came to find us, and he talked to our relatives next door and found out that we, were gone, but we would be back, and he wanted to know if there was going to be a big family, for dinner and that, and my sister-in-law told him yes, and he said, well, our church brings dinner to the homes and that, and so they did, and my husband decided that must be a very good church because he wasn't used to city churches doing that, and of course growing up in a farming community like he did, and then in Bourbon, the community the churches did the dinners.
Mm-hmm.
And that. So that's when we became members of Beautiful Savior then.
Was Pastor Paul Prang there?
No, Pastor Bob Myers, and they lived in Carrollton, and they were there, and then during the years we lived in California. They came out to visit us twice with their family.
Oh, for heaven's
and we did all the deals, Disneyland and all that stuff, but no, Pastor Prang didn't come until '78. Pastor Bob Myers is the one that was the first pastor of the church.
I see. Well, we interviewed Pastor Paul Prang. That's why I
did you?
asked that.
Okay.
Yes, I think it
Okay.
was it this summer or last summer? I'm not sure.
Other than last year.
Yeah.
And he was our guest speaker at the 50th anniversary, yes.
Good.
Because Pastor Myers lives in Texas now, and he's retired and older, and he wasn't able to come, I guess, because he wasn't, here at any of the things.
Well, when your children spent a lot of time, it sounds like growing up in California, correct?
Yes, but now our son was in with the kids when they were young. They, played Corey League and everything, and then my second son, he was active in Cub Scouts, and that was in the Bridgeton area. And then my husband was manager of a girls softball team, and there were really not many places to practice, and so the big field by Beautiful Savior was used for practices for the girls softball.
There was a field by the church?
Mhm.
I didn't know that.
Not a ball field, but just, just the
Empty
ground there.
space.
And that's where they would hold their practices. None of their games, but their practices,
Mhm.
yes. Mhm. And there were several changes, like the Carrollton Shopping Center. When we first moved out here, you had to go to St. Anne's to Kroger's. That was the closest store. And then Carrollton Shopping Center opened, and we had an IGA, and I don't think it was a dime store, but it was a store where you could buy party favors and you could buy different things in the early 60s, and I think their name was Chapman. And then Arkadell was there, which later on moved down to the Rock Road.
We interviewed
And-
them also.
We interviewed Mr. McMurphy from Arkadell.
Oh, okay. And then there was Tropical World Pet Store, and then when my son got older, but he was still young, out of school and that, he worked part-time at Tropical World Pet Store.
We also interviewed a lady that had the Carrollton Beauty Salon.
Mhm.
Do you remember a beauty salon being there in Carrollton?
No, I
It's
really don't.
Creative Coiffures.
Creative Coiffures.
Okay, no, I don't.
Yeah, we
remember
we
that.
went out to Warrenton to interview her.
Yes.
My
and-
mother was a beautician, so I didn't go to beauty shops. My mother took care of those things.
What about Mrs. Telsher Hardware?
Yes,
They
that
also
was, yes,
interviewed her.
and I was up in the east when Telsher Hardware burnt, because they called and told me that the store was burning and that, yes. And I did know her.
Mhm. Do
You also know someone who worked at the Schnooks when it was here.
Okay. And I
Judy.
worked, what?
I worked when the JB store was taken over by Schnucks Markets.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Do you remember that?
Yes, oh yes, because we would go to the, and the drugstore was next door, and then the store that, and it was called JB, you said I knew it was something that break off of Bettendorf's, but I
Right.
wasn't sure what it was.
Right.
And so you worked there?
I worked, but not for JB, for Schnucks.
For Schnucks, okay.
Yes.
When I didn't start shopping at the Schnucks over this way until about 93, I guess. And then I started shopping at Schnucks because my husband's cousin, she worked in the floral
Oh, really?
thing, Sherry George.
Oh.
Sherry George. And so then, and of course it was close to Beautiful Savior, and I would stop in, and then I started shopping at the Schnucks then, because up till that time, then later on out on Dorset Road, when Dorset Road was built, that's where we banked and went to the Kroger's and all that. But when we first moved out here, there wasn't anything really banking in the Bridgeton area. We went into St. John's, to the St. John's Bank or the Community Federal. That's where we went.
Right, sure. Did your children have any involvement or activities at the Bridgeton Community Center or use the pool there?
Not when they were really real young. Chuck, when we first moved back from California, why he was very much into sports and things, and he went to the Bridgeton Community Center, and back then racquetball was a very common thing, and he played racquetball at Bridgeton, and then when he was 21 or 22, he was coming down Smiley and he saw a house for sale, and he came and told me he wanted me to call about it. He was going to buy that house, and he bought the house thinking that it was Bridgeton. He went because then he would be able to get a pass into and he went to the community center, and they told him he didn't live in Bridgeton, he lived in Maryland Heights. He had a Bridgeton address, but he lived in Maryland Heights. So and then at the Bridgeton Community Center, we had different things there of rented the rooms like for funeral dinners or something
Did
like
you?
that. We did, involved or helped with that. And then when my son Chuck and his wife Kathy got married, we had their rehearsal dinner at the Bridgeton Community Center. And then later on, the kids had my 50th
Oh,
birthday at the community center. So we have various things that we did at the Bridgeton Community Center, but not when they were real young. When my grandchildren, the Carrollton pool, I would take them to the Carrollton pool because a friend would give them birthday passes and that for their birthday. And my granddaughter, that's where she took the love of diving, not swimming, but diving. And Carrollton had 3 pools, and the deepest pool was the one she always wanted to go in, and I was not a swimmer, so she could not go in there unless somebody went with her. So a friend would come down the hill and go in there with her, and that's where she got the love of diving, and she became a diver, a very good diver for Pattonville, and now she coaches diving at Bridgeton Community Center, and she's been there since she was 15. She's a management of the Aqua
really?
Center.
What is
at
her name?
Michelle Bell. And she did the indoor pool until, last year, Joe? And then this year she filled in a couple days for two different weeks for one of the ladies that was going to be gone. But she coaches now, coaches diving at Pattonville High School, but not for Pattonville, the Clayton Club. And she also is a coach for Parkway.
Wow, she's busy.
Yes.
She's very busy.
And we still see her once in a while at our pool.
Yes, yes.
And are you a swimmer?
Not a swimmer, no. That I go to the pool that's how I met Joe and his wife Jenny. But I don't go in the aerobics or all that. I just go for the outdoor management and the outdoor water walk in the summer. My granddaughter Michelle, about 4 years ago, wanted Grandma to come because she said it will help you, and I did not want to go. But I went, and the first year I had no name. I was just Michelle's grandma. And then they asked me to come into the indoor pool, and I said no way because I don't go in deep water. And Joe's wife, at that time I didn't know her name, but she told me that I could come and I could stay in the more or less and I didn't have to take the aerobics or the classes. So that's what I do in the winter. And then this is the fourth year that I did the outdoor water walk, and I met many new friends through Bridgeton. And like I said, the first year I was just Michelle's grandma, but now I have my own identity. I'm Frances.
I also can relate to that. I've been known as somebody's mother and now grandmother. But let's talk about that outside water walking, because I have also done it. I didn't do it very much this summer for one reason or another. But for those that might be watching this interview that aren't sure, can you tell us a little bit more how that works?
Well, it's just wonderful. It's 9:30 in the morning to 11:45, Monday through Friday, from June to August, but Michelle has been able to keep it open for 2 or 3 weeks after Pattonville kids go to school with her working as lifeguard. Like I told her one day, I said, you demoted yourself from management to lifeguard. Grandma, she said.
Do they have to have a lifeguard?
Yes, they have to have a lifeguard on duty, and the water walk is only for the lazy river. You're not allowed to go into the other parts of the pool. It's just that, and you walk at your own pace, and then there is a round circle that has a little seating in it, and you can sit there and do your leg exercises or whatever. And you can come and go as you please. You don't have to stay the whole 3 hours. And of course, I get a wonderful suntan there. And Michelle and I always had a contest when she was little, who was going to have the best suntan. Well, then at the water walk, after she became management, she wasn't lifeguard anymore, so she didn't get as much sun. And so Grandma beat her because Grandma had a better suntan.
Yeah, it's like I said, I've been there. It's very social, isn't it?
Right, and then at the end of the year, I guess you call it the senior center services and the water walk people have a beach blanket bingo.
Oh, I've
And,
never heard of that.
It's really neat. It's breakfast, and you have the breakfast out by the pool, and then you can play bingo. Mary Lane runs that, and Michelle takes care of over at the swimming part, and all the pool, the whole pool is open then. If you don't wanna do the water walk, you can go in the area pools, and they have more lifeguards on duty and that for that. And then that's always held the last Friday in August before Pattonville kids go back to school.
Well, I didn't know
And
anything
they
about
have,
that.
They have prizes for the bingo. You can play bingo and then go on over into the pool or go on over to the water walk. And it's a catered breakfast, and it's very, very nice. And the lifeguards are just wonderful at the water walk. The boys are the girls, and this past year, of course Michelle always looked out for me, but the past year when Michelle was management, she wasn't always out there, or she wasn't always right there, and they always make a point to help me or help anybody that needs help, a little bit of extra help. And they are all wonderful young people that really care about all of us senior citizens, or elderly people, I guess I should say.
Bridgeton has really a lot of nice things for the seniors, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, very much so. But now when the Bridgeton pool opened then, because I always took the kids to the Carrollton pool when they were little, but the Bridgeton pool, when it opened, that is where Michelle took her diving lessons, and that's where her brother Philip took his swimming lessons, and Grandma would take him at 7:30 in the morning, and sometimes it'd be pouring down rain. I'd be sitting in the car, and they would be doing their practices in the rain.
Yeah, that's when they have to, have practice early in the morning.
My grandchildren, I have 9 grandchildren, and my grandchildren, we always visited the parks, Gentry Park and Hellbush Park, and Grandma kept the grandkids, and so while the parents worked and everything, and my Dusty and Destiny and Sarah and Michelle and Philip, we made a very much visits to the park. We'd take our picnic lunch, and then at Gentry, before some of those homes were built in the back there, why that was, you could walk along the creek, I think it was a little creek-like, and we would do that, and so we did a lot of things in the Bridgeton parks.
That's nice. Sounds like a lot of fun. Do you have grandchildren that go to Pattonville schools now?
My last one graduated in May from Pattonville. Yes, I have 2 grandchildren that's still in school, but my daughter and family, they live in O'Fallon, Illinois. So my granddaughter Delaney is a senior in O'Fallon, and my grandson, who is 11, is in 5th grade. I have 2 great-grandchildren now, and one of them may go to Pattonville. I don't know. One is 3 and one is 1.5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you ever take part in these day trips that they do?
Yes, I have.
Where have you gone?
We went to the first one I went on was Mary Lane called me, and they had, she had told Michelle of a cancellation, and they wanted to know if I'd like to go, and I went, and it was a story that really touched several people that was on the trip. My grandson Dusty, who lived in O'Fallon, Illinois, he had been in service, and he was gone and for 2 years, and he was back, but I had not seen him yet. But he was at what is in Illinois, Scott Air Force Base, Scott Air Force Base, and that was the trip. We had went on a regular tour bus, and then a person met us at the Scott Air Force Base and took us on the grounds, but you really didn't get off the bus or anything, they said. And anyway, so I thought, well, I wonder where Dusty would be, because he was in an office thing, and I wondered where he would be since he had returned from his 2 years out of, state. service, and so I thought, well, I wouldn't get him, but I called him on his cell phone, and he answered. And I said it to him, you know, and he said, well, what have you seen? And I told him, and he said, are you sure? And I said, well, yes. And I said, we're by an airplane now, and I said, they have gotten off the bus, but I said, I didn't really, you know, think that I better get off the bus because I might fall or something, so I said, I'm on the bus. And I thought he hung up on me because it was just dead silence. And about that time he said, Graham, he always called me Graham, he said, Graham, he said, I'm looking out my office window and I see your bus. And he said, I'll be right out. Well, I couldn't open the bus door, so I took my cane and I rattled it on the bus door, and the bus driver opened the door and he said, oh, you changed your mind, you want to get out? And I said, my grandson's working in that building, and he's coming to see me. And he says, that must be him running through the field.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was running this way, and I was walking with my cane. And several of the Bridgeton people, they said, that just made our trip to see. And so I had not seen him in 2 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
that was the first trip I took with Bridgeton. And then we did a trip to Herman. And my grandmother grew up in Herman.
Oh,
and
wow.
so Herman, we had went many times. So it was, you know, that was a very nice, and that was a Christmas trip, but I had never seen the Catholic church and all that with the Christmas trees and that was a very nice trip.
How would you mind me asking, because I haven't taken part in any of the tours, how do they do you sign up for these trips individually, and do you pay for them individually? How
Yes,
does it work? And how do you know about it?
Well,
How do you know about it?
they sent you a letter, but now since I don't get the letter, you can pick up a bulletin at the pool, but I would usually forget when I was there. But so sometimes when you call, they have already booked, but they're already booked, but they will put you on a waiting list. And they recently had a trip to Pierre Marquette, and on the boat, I think it's called the Peoria, and I had signed up for it in case there was a cancellation, but then I thought I better not go because people pay for their trip, and everyone says, oh, we'll help you, we'll take, but I don't want to take away from people that's paid on the trip and take away from them enjoying their day, so I bowed out and I didn't go 2 weeks ago. But you pay, and then if there's a cancellation on that, I don't know if you get your money back or what, I don't know. But the one trip I went on, I know I went on cancellation, but I paid my way. I mean, you know, I paid it.
Is it a friendly group?
Yes, they're very nice, and like I said, that's where I made several friends because they didn't know me. And then at the water walk one day, somebody said, oh, you're the grandma that the grandson was running in the field to. And so I made history like that.
Wow, that is special.
But
That's
they are very,
special.
very nice. It's a very nice group, and we just have a good time.
That's wonderful. Well, you know, actually, the community center is not open anymore.
That's right.
We are going to have a new one built. Well, we're kind of really like in limbo right now for a few
Because
months.
our last thing at the pool was October the 16th for the swimming pool.
Right,
Yes,
it's kind of sad. Are you going to be going somewhere else?
My silver sneakers card, I could go to the Y, but I don't really think I feel comfortable. And I know everybody over at Bridgeton, and they all take care of Michelle's grandma, so no, I probably will not.
But
Just-
when the news...
I will start right away again, yes, I
Yes,
will.
and the nice thing is, of course, that the new building will be just behind the old building, so it's not
Right.
like people have to find their way.
Right, but now my grandchildren, Laura and her little daughter, Isabel, and then my granddaughter Sarah and her daughter Emma, and my granddaughter Franny, boy, they all enjoy going to the outdoor pool at Bridgeton and that, and so, but they've never done the indoor pool or anything with me. Now the outdoor pool, you asked about the water walk, and it is, and I might be wrong on that, it might be 18, but I think you have to be 16, and if people show up and have children under 16, they are not allowed in the water walk
Oh,
in the
really?
Lazy River.
Oh, I
It
didn't know
is-
that.
Yes, they cannot. Now, there will be sometimes swimming lessons going on in the pool, but they have their own lifeguards over there. And you have to be, like I said, it could be 18, but I think it's 16 years old that you have to be able to do the Lazy River water walk. And I understand, and I might be wrong, Joe, I don't know, but I understand there will be a Lazy River in the new indoor pool. Now, I don't know if they'll have Lazy River water walk or that or not, but that gives me very much more strength in my legs and everything than the indoor pool does.
Well, that's just really neat to think about. For me too, I'm not much of a swimmer, but the
No, I
walking
do
was
not
a lot of
swim,
fun.
but now I do get in the deeper water now at the pool, not the deep, but I do go from right at the corner, I go down to almost to the 5 feet because the deeper water does help my arms and that, and you don't have that in the Lazy River. But no, I am not a water person. In fact, all of them, several of them over there, if I'm talking, I've even been talking to Joe or Jenny, and all of a sudden I realize I'm getting to it and I get a panic attack, and they say, back up, Frances. So I do not go in the deep water, so we would welcome you.
Well, I hope to be able to take advantage of the new pool, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm sad that the old, our community center is
And
closed
then Cole
now.
is the main manager of the pool and that, and of course Michelle works under him, but Cole and all of them are just wonderful. They really, really are.
That's so nice to hear all that. It really is truly nice to hear that. I felt like our community center was really, a place for a lot of people to gather, whether it was people playing cards, shooting pool, or working.
Now, I have never joined in any of the card games or anything. I have went and played bingo, and I went to some of the, what do you call them? Like they have when they have music entertainment or something, and then the concerts in the summer and all that. And then my son Larry, his family, they go to the pool a lot, and I'll go, whenever they're there and that. And we always did at the Carrollton thing too. And years ago at the Carrollton pool, on Friday nights they had like family night, and it would be open till 10, and you could bring your dinner and sit at the picnic tables, and we did things like that. So we've always been active in the Bridgeton community. Now, my husband was American Legion, and but now that was off of Dorset Road. That was in Maryland Heights, but we did a lot of things and I used to get the person from Pattonville High School for the Missouri Girls State that the Legion hosts every year. And one year, this was back in the 60s, and Lambert was a very, very, populated street at that time, and that's before Collier's Funeral Home or anything was built on Lambert. And we had a girl, of course I wasn't working with the Girls State then, but we had a girl, she was a Brannicky girl in the 60s, and she made governor at Fulton for the Missouri Girls State. And when she came back, the Legion went to the Bridgeton, I guess, City Hall or whatever, and they got a part of Lambert closed down for a parade for her.
Wow.
And you didn't hear of those things. And that would have been in the 60s, probably 64 or 65. I might be wrong in the exact year. But that was something that we always said that just didn't happen. But we had a regular parade for the Brannicky girl when she returned from being governor.
Wow, quite nice, quite nice. Joe and I have interviewed many people, and we talked about the different businesses on St. Charles Rock Road and how it's changed. And you mentioned the burger bar.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other businesses you just kind of think of on the top of your head? Like, did you go to Grandpa Pigeon?
Yes, I was going to say that, and that was something I had written down and I had forgotten to bring up. Grandpa Pigeon's wasn't where it was at the end when it was here in the area. It was like at the wedge of across from where McDonald's hamburger place built later, because my son Larry worked at that McDonald's. But Grandpa Pigeon's was a little place, and it seemed like to me it had a fencing around it that they put at night or something. But the old Grandpa Pigeon's, and then when the new Grandpa Pigeon's opened, then it was down on the Rock Road.
My husband loved to go in there.
Right, right. Well, that's where, when, before Chuck was born, that's where we bought all his, well, I got a lot of things at my baby shower, but that's where we went to buy the things for, you know, his nursery, and that was the Grandpa Pigeons and the little baby blankets and the things, and that was the old Grandpa Pigeons, and it was quite different than what the new Grandpa Pigeons
What was the old
became.
one like?
Well, like I said, it was like, it wasn't really outdoors, but they had a lot of things outdoors because they put a fence so you couldn't get in there at night, and it was just,
Did they have the linens and towels and that kind of thing in the old one?
yeah, but it was much bigger after they went in for a lot of dishes. In fact, I still have the little white platters that you would, and they were like 15 cents. I have a orange juice pitcher that I think someday my grandkids are gonna fight over, and it was bought at the old Grandpa Pigeons for 15 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a lot of pottery dishes, more or less than
We've heard that.
what I remember. But now we did like buy baby things there though too, for the nursery and that for our first one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Did you go to Brannicky Hardware from time to time?
Brannicky's was, yes, my husband and his brother and cousin had big gardens, and that's where they went and bought their seed and stuff like that. But when I was a child, I was growing up in Bourbon, we had a man, he was like, well, it wasn't my grandpa, but he was like a grandma, he and his wife were like grandma and grandpa. And we would come in on a Sunday afternoon sometime for our rides, and they would go past Brannicky's, and then we would come in the week, and this man, he was like, of course, back then when I was a kid, 50 years old, he was old, but he would talk about when he grew up, and it wasn't Pattonville, it was called Patton or something, and he talked about the Brannicky store that they lived in St. Louis, but they would come out on a Saturday, I think, Friday or Saturday afternoon, and would take them all day to come out here, and they would buy eggs and things from Brannicky's. So I knew of Brannicky's before I ever moved
Wow.
into this area. And then another thing that was very interesting, my husband started McDonnell Douglas in '57 with a man that started working there that day too. And he grew up in was raised in the old Missouri Baptist Children's Home.
Oh, really?
And he told many stories of that, like they owned all the fields, and they grew their own strawberries for the Strawberry Festival. And in the early '60s, we started going to the Strawberry Festival because he supported that so much, because he said that growing up there, and they walked across the road to the Pattonville Grade School, which I think now is a credit union or
Yes,
something.
I think you're right.
But he always spoke very highly of the Missouri Baptist Children's Home, and he said that was that first Saturday in June when they had that was like their Christmas, because some of those kids, and he was one of them, they did not have family to come see them. And people would come and they would bring all kinds of gifts and toys, and he said that was their Christmas in June. And then later, and they grew their own strawberries, and the children had to work in those strawberries and pick the strawberries and everything for the festival. And then I guess it was in the mid-'60s, and I might be wrong on that, but Kmart then bought some of the ground, and Kmart store went in there where Weekends Only is now.
Oh, yes.
And
I remember, yes.
if I remember correctly, and I might be wrong on this, but I think that there was a grocery store along with Kmart, and they had a thing in their clause when they sold it that they could, sold the ground to them, they could not sell alcoholic beverages in their store because it was on the Missouri Baptist grounds. And then when I think it was still in business when we moved back from California, the Kmart was, but then later on there was a Kmart out in Maryland Heights, and then the Kmart, you know, built where it is now. But at that time it was right behind the Missouri Baptist Children's Home. And so they had no strawberry fields, and that's when they started. But of course, my husband's friend, he was also my Larry Scott. Well, you might know Mary Ann Seville from the senior thing at Bridgeton. Well, it was her husband, and he passed away before my husband did. But we always went to the festival in honor of Rich because he supported it very, very highly.
That's wonderful. I know I saw the sign and I always, wanted to go there, but I guess I just never made it.
Of course, it's
there.
different now. They buy their own strawberries. And see, back then, the churches from all over Missouri came and they would bring cakes, and you had your different stands. Like my husband, we always went with friends, and my husband and my friend Diane Dooney, why they would go find the prettiest looking chocolate cake, and then her husband Lauren and I would go see where the great big high angel food cakes were, and we'd always and then you got your cake and ice cream and that, and then later on they went to that had to be packaged, and I haven't been for a few years, but I think that's the way it is.
Didn't they have something with quilts there as well?
Oh yes, that was a big thing. You went down and you looked at the quilts, and in fact our friends bought a quilt from there. They had the quilts, and yes, they did.
Speaking of the children's home,
Yes.
we interviewed a fellow by the name of John Abraham. And one of the interesting stories he told us was that when he was going to Pattonville High School, one of his jobs was to in an orderly fashion, march the pupils from the orphans home across the street to Pattonville High School, where they went to school, and then he took them home for lunch, and then took them back again.
Rich talked to that too. Rich said they were always supervised to go across, because I guess really the Rock Road was, and there wasn't really, well, it wouldn't have been close enough, but far enough for a school bus or anything, but he said there was, he called a crossing guard is what he called it, And then of course that was St. Anne's, so I guess I'm not supposed to talk about St. Anne's, but we had the drive-in, the St. Anne drive-in, and then the other drive-in, and you would go early because the one drive-in had the little roller coaster and the rides, and then when Rich and his wife Mary Ann, when they were dating in '58, when we were dating, we would double date, and we would go to the shows, the drive-in theaters, and there was 2 of them on the Rock Road, and then we went to Holiday Hill,
and
that was a big thing. And then when our kids were little, of course Holiday Hill was still there, and I think it was one of the things that was gone when we moved back, from California. But in fact, I think Holiday Hill was the very first place we went after I came to St. Louis. When my husband and I dated in St. Louis, we dated out in Bourbon and Sullivan area, but when I came to St. Louis, Holiday Hill was one of the first places we went to.
Yeah, I was sad when that closed down.
And I think then like I said, several things, there was a lot of changes when we moved back from California. It was like almost moving to a whole, because there was new streets, there were new everything,
And it continues to change.
Right.
Look at the last airport exchange.
We rented our home out. Our brother-in-law and sister-in-law next door, they took care of things, and we had 3 different renters in there during the time that we were gone, and we really came back to improvements where some of the McDonnell Douglas people came back to disasters at their homes where they rented, yes. But it was quite different. Our home wasn't done when we first got married, so we moved in '59, and when we moved to the desert, it was quite different. We had color TV, we went to black and white TV, we always had a washer and dryer in our house. There we didn't, and it was quite different. So it was like going backwards instead of forwards.
Well, it's been great talking to you and listening to all the wonderful, times you and your family have had in Bridgeton, and I hope it continues, and I hope you enjoy the new community center.
Oh, I will, and the people at Beautiful Savior and at the Bridgeton Community Center, they all look out for me, and everybody it's wonderful to this old lady.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.